Hi, welcome back. Um, Today we're going to read Joe's Journey and in midst of an inner circle. And we're going to be reading it. I'm reading it off of the Kindle, so I don't have the book thing title to show you. Hold on a second, maybe we can pull that up real quick. Yeah. So Joe's Journey, that's the book cover, and we're going to start from the. We've done the first chapter, and we'll go to chapter 2. Joe and Sophie are married, and we're going to be chapters 2 and 3, where Joe begins his journey. So this is chapter 2. Joe and Sophie are married. They had been married for a few years now, and his wife Sophie was getting broody. She wanted to start a family. After trying for 6 months, she was getting depressed. I said to Joe, I need to go to the doctors. But Joe said to wait to the end of the year, as there could be several things why she could not conceive. So the following year in the spring, she said to Joe, I am pregnant. That is wonderful news, Sophie. Joe was so excited. He wanted to shout from the hilltops, but Sophie said it was a bit early to tell everyone yet. She booked an appointment to see the doctor, and the doctor confirmed she was nearly 4 months pregnant. After taking a test, when she told Joe, he said, we can tell everyone now. It's great news. I'm going to be a dad. They told everyone the news, and congratulation cards started coming in. They had so many of them, although they only had a few, very small family. They both knew a lot of people between them. They couldn't count them. There were so many of them. Sophie wrote to her sister to tell her the good news. She didn't see her sister very much. In fact, not at all. Her sister married a Marine, and they went over to America to live and settled there very nicely. And she has her first child now, and they called her Annabelle. As time passed, Sophie got bigger and bigger. She was getting very tired lately. Through working in a shop, taking people's money, giving them change. It was standing on her feet so long that she could sit down, but every time she tried to sit down, another customer wanted to be served again. This day was a Saturday, and it was extremely hot, so everyone was down on the beach. Hardly anyone was in the shop. So Joe said, I'm shutting up half day. But you cannot do that, said Sophie. Your father will be incredibly angry. Yes, I can, and I am. We have not done any trade whatsoever, and we're off down to the country for a picnic. Sophie enjoyed her picnic. They had a lovely afternoon out, and the next day was Sunday, so they could have a lay-in. But the weather that day was raining, so they drove down to Joe's friend's cafe for a good old Sunday lunch. Although he was Joe's friend, he always called him Mr. Thompson. They both enjoyed their Sunday lunch, and Sophie was feeling better after resting the weekend. The next day, Sophie had an appointment to see her doctor. She was up early and ready to go. She kissed Joe on the cheek and said, I will be late home, my love. She ran out thinking she was late. Joe shouted, don't run. She said, I love you. I love you. See you soon. All of a sudden, there was a big screech outside. Joe quickly ran out to see what was happening. Joe looked over, and there was a big crowd outside. Joe shouted, no, 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 not my Sophie. He pushed through the crowd to see it was Sophie, and he just froze for a second. Then went over to her and said to her, Sophie, you can't leave me now. It's not time yet. We have a baby on the way. Please don't leave. He held her hand and gently squeezed it. The police took hold of him gently and said, is she your wife, sir? Yes, said Joe. Is she going to be all right? The police officer said, sir, your wife is gone, I'm sorry to say. No, she's not gone. Please help her. It's too late. She's gone. Joe clutches her hand and said, Sophie, wake up, my love. Please do not go. He bends down to kiss her on the lips, but there is no response. Tears are running down his face. He slowly gets up, and as he's getting up, he sees a smoky cloud and her voice saying, I love you. Goodbye, my love. Joe pushes through to go back to his shop, not saying a word to anyone. People try to console him, but he does not want to speak with them. The policeman asks if he can get anyone, but he says, no, I want to be on my own. We need to take you to the hospital. You are suffering from shock, sir. Please come with us, sir. Only if I can go with my Sophie. So they take him to the hospital. The nurse asked him if he would like a cup of tea. He said, yes, please. I'm waiting for my wife. The nurse replies, sir, your wife has gone. Can I get someone to stay with you after we examine you? No. If my wife is gone, then there is nobody else. I'll get you a cup of tea, sir. When the nurse returns, she finds that he is gone. Joe has left the hospital. They look everywhere for him, but he is nowhere to be seen. Joe goes missing for weeks on end. The police ask everyone if they have seen him, but no one has seen him around. Joe goes off into the wood and the mountains. He went home and packed some food in his haversack and set out for the woods and mountains where no one could find him. He stayed there for a week. He did not care about the shop, just shut the door and left. Eventually, he did go and see his friend, Mr. Thompson. His friend was very concerned about him. When Joe knocked on the door, his friend said, Joe, where have you been? Everyone's been out looking for you. Joe said, I could not stay 1 minute more in that shop. Didn't want you. Couldn't stand 1 more minute in that shop. Didn't you go home? No, I wanted to think. Where'd you go? Up in the mountains and into the woods. What? Why'd you want to go up there for? You could have come here. I know. But I needed to be alone. I see, said his friend. Now, what are you going? Now that you are here, let me get you something to eat. What a good old fry-up. Sounds good to me, said Joe. I'm starving. So they both tuck into their fry-up, then a big cuppa. And now Joe was full up and watered and fed. It was getting late. Then Joe realized that Mr. Thompson's wife was not there and said, where's your wife? Thompson said that she had to go to America because her mother was ill. When Thompson told him that they were going to move over there because her mother needed help, Thompson said he was going to tell him in a few weeks as he was going over the end of the month to join his wife. Joe was shocked and upset. He said he would miss him. Thompson said, what are your plans, Joe? Then Joe said he was going to wait till after the funeral, then he was going to shut everything up. Just up and go. But you cannot do that, Joe. What about the business? I don't know. And I don't care. But there is no buts about it. I'm going and that's it. Oh well, if you make up your mind, then I will send my address to your house and maybe you can visit us when you get home. You don't understand me. I'm not ever coming back. Joe, please think of what you're doing. I have nobody left here and they've all gone. Well, if you insist, then have a good night's sleep and think about it. You must stay here for tonight. Thank you, Joe answered. The next morning, Joe had to go home and get ready for the funeral. I'll see you at your funeral. Yes, Joe, I'll see you there. Everything went well with the funeral. Joe said goodbyes and shut the door and left with just some food in his haversack and a few other bits and bobs. He walked and walked for miles and miles in the mountains and the woods. He did not stop until the night. He doesn't even know where he's heading to. He rests at night, walks in the day in all weathers, until one day he ends up in a village where he is exhausted. So he finds a bench to rest. And this scruffy little dog comes up to him with incredibly sad eyes as if to say, have you got any food? So Joe bends down to stroke him and says, here, you can have some of my food. When Joe gets up to leave, the dog follows him. Joe shoos him away, but he keeps following him. Joe says, go home, but he still follows him. Then Joe says, well, I suppose you're on your way own as well. Well, then if you're coming with me, you must keep up with me. So the little dog, who he names Patch because his fur is covered one of his eyes, traveled alongside beside Joe. Patch followed Joe everywhere, so now Joe had a little friend. This is chapter 3, Joe's life changes. It is months passed after Joe's dear friend moved away. Life was getting lonely for Joe. He just had his little dog Patch to talk to. No one wanted to know a smelly old tramp. The winter was coming, so Joe decided to leave the town he was staying in. So off he went, not knowing where he was going to end up. He walked a long way until he came to a village. He was getting tired, and so was Patch, so he set up camp in the woods. He still had some food left, so he made a fire to warm himself up. It was a large area without any trees, so he did not risk causing a fire. He slept well, so he and Patch set off again. The village was getting nearer. He was quite well dressed. He said to Patch, "This is a lovely village, Patch." And Patch woofed. He found a nice park and sat on a bench, just watching everything and everyone walking past. Some people said hello to him, and he thought they were quite friendly. He said to Patch, "I think we might stop here, Patch." He gave him one of his bones. "Come on, Patch. Let's get some food in that shop." So he got quite a few tins for Patch and a dish for his food and a for his water. "There you are, Patch. You're going up in the world." The store assistant said, "Thank you, sir." Joe thought to himself that no one had ever called him sir before. He quite liked it. They walked around for a bit, then headed back to the wood for something to eat. Shortly after, they both fell asleep. The next morning it was raining, and they were getting wet, so they made their way back into the village to see if they could find some shelter. It was a seed, so they stopped to take cover and keep dry until the rain passed over. The next morning was much better, so they took a slow walk into the village. There were people walking in the high street as they passed. They looked at Joe and Patch. Some said good morning, some didn't. But what was strange was they knew Joe was new to the village, and it was as if they were watching him. One lady said, "Hello, you are new in these parts, aren't you?" Joe said, "Yes, ma'am." Then she said, "Well, have a lovely day." "And you too," replied Joe. Joe was running out of money, and he needed a bath, but there did not seem to be anywhere to get one. He was beginning to miss his friend, and the Sunday breakfast his friend cooked him. Joe was beginning to feel out of place in this village. The children seemed to be on half term. A few of them passed him a bouncing ball. "We were going to the park to play football." He started bouncing the ball, then it hit Joe. He looked around. The boy said, "Sorry, mate." But Joe did not answer them as they walked on. They held their noses and started laughing at him. He was so upset, and Patch growled at them. As he walked on, he felt provocative eyes watching him. So he decided he would leave the village. He said, "Come on, Patch. I do not think we're welcome here." So they packed up and left. As they packed their things and started to walk on, Joe looked around him. The stream was so beautiful, the flowers were in bud. He looked up at the birds all around him as they sang to him with a beautiful song that he could almost sing himself. He was sorry to leave, but they did not fit in, so they said goodbye to the birds who had made them welcome. It was exceedingly early in the morning, so they had a good start. "We need to head for London, Patch. There's a lot more people there, and they will not bother us like this place. People are so busy in London to worry about us," so off they went. It took a long time to get to London, and had to stop and rest for the night, so it was a very, very long journey for them. And they were getting hungry, too. He started looking in the bins along the journey for something to eat. Sometimes they would find fish and chips that people could not eat all of. At nighttime was the best. As they passed towns, people would put a lot in bins, so they done quite well, really. Then the parks would have hot water taps to drink out of. So he used to fill Patch's bowl up for him. London was not far away now. They were both very tired. But they continued on, desperate to get there before dark. Joe said, "Patch, look, we're nearly there." They were just outside London, and they both just fell to their knees and fell asleep right away. When he was traveling in the snow, he walked for miles in all weathers. Patch, too. They blistered their feet, but Patch stayed with Joe. Patch, too, had blisters on his feet, but Patch stayed with Joe. Next morning was a chilly one, so Joe quickly gathered up everything so they could get an early start. It was quiet in the town as it was incredibly early. He did not know where he was. He looked around and saw a bridge. It was London Bridge. He turned to Patch and said, "Well, be all right, but here, Patch." They sat down to rest. People started to walk across the bridge. Then someone bent down to smooth Patch as he was laying in Joe's old coat. The man threw 5 pounds down and said, "Get a cup of coffee, old man, and the dog something to eat." Joe looked up and said, "Thank you, sir." He looked so surprised. "Look, Patch, that man gave us some money to get something to eat." He could not believe it, as he had only just arrived. So they set off again to find somewhere to get a cup of tea. They walked further down the road. There was a van. They both ate their burger and drank their tea. Patch also made friends with the owner of the van, so they made a friend as well. As the man said to Joe, "If you ever need any help, old man, just come and see me." Joe said thank you to the man and was moved by his kindness. The man said, "My name is Frank. I've been here for years, and my advice to you is to go to the shelters. They'll help you and your little dog." Joe said, "Yes, I will," but he had no intention of doing that. He started to worry about his appearance now, though, and thought it best that he should pay a visit to the shelter. When he got there, he had a look at himself. He was shocked of what he could see in the mirror. He remembered himself as a young man, very smart at one time. But now he was old, with long, straggly hair. He had once had dark hair, and quite curly, but now it was gray, exceptionally long. And he had a beard that was matted with his mouth slanted on one side. Maybe he had a slight stroke. His eyes were puffed up, and he did not recognize himself at all. He asked if he could get some help. The people there and there asked, "What help do you need?" He asked for a cleanup, so they asked him a few questions, but Joe couldn't answer them. They were a bit concerned about him, so they said, "We can give you a cleanup, but you'll have to send a paper first. Here's our policy." But Joe said, "My name is Joe, and that's all I can remember." "Well, just put Joe for now, and we will give you a cleanup. You can start by having a bath first. Then we'll cut your hair and your beard, and then you can pick out some clothes for yourself and have a good meal and a good night rest." "Can I keep my dog with me?" "Yes, we did not usually, but in this case, we will turn a blind eye, as you do need a cleanup." They asked him how he got in the mess he was in, but in a subtle way, he said he'd been traveling for so long. "How long have you been traveling for?" He didn't know. For years, he said. "Why have you been traveling, Joe?" "I don't know." "Okay, well, let's get cleaned up for now." When they finished cleaning him up, they said if he needed more help, then just ask. But being Joe, he was stubborn, so he would not ask. He thanked them, then went on his way again. He felt a new man. "Are you staying in London, Joe?" one of them asked as she was head of the group. Joe looked around and said, "Yes, it took us long enough to get here, so I guess." "Well, here's a card, and if you are in need of our help, just call, or you know where we are." "Thank you again, but I'll be fine." And the lady that helped him was Molly. I'm going to bring this up. There's some pictures here, so you can see that's Molly. That's Joe. Can't really see him very good there. And then that was Patch and the flowers and stuff. So, and then at the beginning, as I said, there are some pictures. There we go. And there's Joe and Patch again. So, again, that's Joe's Journey by Marilyn Reilly. And I hope you enjoyed it. We'll see about doing some more pages from that. That's a nice book. And again, my books are available on Amazon. These Legend Creation, the ones I've been reading, and Joe's Journey are also available on Amazon. I hope to see you again, and thank you for visiting and hearing my stories. So, hope to see you again next time. And next time I'll be reading another one of my books, either Harry Prentice, or I'll be reading one of my other ones from the Time Is series. And if you like any of these books, please let us know, and we'll continue to do this as long as we can. So thank you for visiting, and hope to see you again on my next video.